Have you ever noticed how some people who started with nothing, no advantages, no safety net, no one handing them a roadmap, somehow find their way to a life that looks, from the outside, like it was always meant to be that way? And maybe you've already started to wonder what actually separates those people from everyone else. Because it's probably not what most people think. Psychology has been studying this for decades. And what researchers keep finding is that the people who build wealth from zero share certain mental patterns, not talents, not luck, patterns. And the fascinating thing about patterns is that once you recognize one, you can't stop seeing it. The first pattern is about time, specifically the relationship between now and later. People who rise from nothing tend to have trained themselves, consciously or not, to find comfort in the gap between effort and reward. They become fluent in the language of not yet. While others spend energy seeking immediate relief, these people have somehow made peace with the waiting. And as you begin to notice that same quality in yourself, even in small moments, even in ways you might have taken for granted, something shifts. The waiting starts to feel less like sacrifice and more like investment. You may have already heard ideas like this in The Science of Getting Rich. It's in our playlists, the full audio book. And if you haven't listened yet, there's something in it that tends to land differently than you might expect. Wallace Wattles describes wealth not as a destination, but as a way of moving through the world. And most people, when they really sit with that, realize they've already been doing more of it than they gave themselves credit for. The second pattern is identity, not income, not circumstances, identity. The story a person carries about what is possible for someone like them. What's interesting is that the people who make the greatest leaps often change that story quietly, internally, before anything on the outside changed at all. Their environment stayed the same for a while. Their bank account didn't move, and yet something had already shifted. A kind of permission they gave themselves to be someone who succeeds. And the mind, being the extraordinary instrument it is, tends to find ways to close the distance between who you believe yourself to be and what your life looks like. Which brings us to emotion. Specifically, what happens when fear and frustration and the ordinary disappointments of building something real show up, because they always do. The people who keep going aren't the ones who don't feel those things. They feel all of it. What's different is that they've developed a kind of gap between the feeling and the response. A breath, a pause, a moment of noticing before reacting. And that noticing, that small, quiet skill, is worth more than almost anything else in the long run. If you've spent any time with our Coherence Breathing playlist, you already know something about this. That particular practice has a way of rewiring how the nervous system handles pressure so that over time, uncertainty starts to feel less like danger and more like information. Speaking of uncertainty, it deserves its own moment here, because building anything from zero involves a sustained tolerance for not knowing. The brain is wired to prefer predictability. It finds comfort in guaranteed outcomes and clear timelines. And yet the people who go furthest seem to have made a kind of quiet agreement with the unknown. A willingness to act before all the conditions are perfect, before all the questions are answered. There's something almost meditative about that, and interestingly, some of our most watched content on this channel isn't about investing at all. It's our original flute music. Ambient, long-form, unhurried, and the people who find it tend to return to it again and again, not because it gives them answers, but because it gives them a different relationship with the space between. That's the same skill. Whether you're building a passive income stream, or simply breathing through a long, quiet tone, you're practicing the same thing. And finally, the fifth pattern. It has to do with where attention goes. The people who build lasting wealth tend to keep their focus on becoming valuable rather than appearing successful. Skills first. Reputation as a byproduct. Wattles talks about this directly in The Science of Getting Rich. The principle of giving more in use value than you take in cash value. And when that becomes a genuine orientation rather than a strategy, the opportunities tend to follow in ways that are hard to predict and harder to ignore. So here is what all of this adds up to. Everyone starts somewhere. Everyone has had wins and losses, setbacks and rebounds, moments of doubt and moments of quiet knowing. The psychology of people who build wealth from zero isn't reserved for people who started from zero. It's available to anyone who recognizes these patterns in themselves, and you may already be noticing as you listen to this that some of these qualities have been quietly developing in you for longer than you realized. Subscribe if you want to keep exploring this territory with us. The Science of Getting Rich audiobook is in our playlists, free, complete, and worth returning to. The coherence-breathing content is there when you want it, and the music is there when you need to simply be in the kind of silence that has room to breathe. This channel keeps growing because people like you keep showing up, and something about that feels exactly right. Here is something that most people who are working hard never stop to consider. The effort is real, the hours are real. The intention behind every early morning and every late night is completely genuine. And still, for a lot of people, the breakthrough doesn't come. Not because something is wrong with them, but because hard work on its own was never the full equation. And somewhere, quietly, a part of you probably already knows that. Tom Sosnoff has been in rooms most people never get into. From the trading floor of the Chicago Board Options Exchange to founding 2 companies that each crossed $1 billion, Thinkorswim and Tastytrade, he has watched up close, over decades, what actually separates the people who grind forever from the ones who finally break through. And what he found wasn't about talent. It wasn't about connections or timing or being in the right place. It was behavioral. Specific, repeatable, learnable behaviors that compound quietly until one day they're the only thing that explains the gap. 5 habits. And as you hear each one, you may find yourself recognizing something you've already been doing, or noticing something you're closer to than you thought. The first is responsiveness. Not just replying, but the quality and speed of how you show up when someone reaches out. In high-performance environments, the speed of your response is read as a signal of how seriously you take the relationship, the opportunity, the person on the other end. People who move quickly in this one small way are quietly telling the world they are present, they are reliable, and they are ready, and the world tends to respond in kind. The second habit is physical presence. There is something that happens in a room that cannot happen on a screen. A conversation that goes somewhere unexpected, a connection that forms in the margins of a meeting, an opportunity that announces itself only to the people who showed up in person. Sosnoff is direct about this one. In a world where everyone is defaulting to remote and digital and convenient, the people who still physically show up are standing in a field that is increasingly empty, and they are being noticed for it. The third habit is owning your domain. Knowing your subject so thoroughly, so genuinely, not just on the surface, that you become the person others turn to when the question is hard. This isn't about performing expertise, it's about the quiet confidence of someone who has done the work so many times that it has become part of how they think. You probably already have a domain like this, something you know at a level that surprises people. And if you've been spending time with the Science of Getting Rich in our playlists, or working through the principles we explore in these videos, you're already building the kind of internal framework that turns scattered information into genuine depth. The fourth habit is decisiveness. The ability to make a call, not recklessly, but without the kind of paralysis that comes from waiting for perfect information that never arrives. High-stakes environments reward people who can synthesize what they know, acknowledge what they don't, and move anyway. Indecision is expensive, not just in the obvious ways, the missed trades, the delayed launches, the opportunities that close before you answer, but in the subtler cost of what chronic hesitation does to your own sense of momentum. And momentum, once you feel it returning, has a way of building on itself in ways that are hard to predict and genuinely satisfying to experience. The fifth habit, and Sosnoff names this alongside responsiveness as a true non-negotiable, is real engagement, not performed interest. Not the nod and the follow-up question you rehearsed. Actual curiosity about the person in front of you, the problem on the table, the idea being explored. In a world where attention is the scarcest resource, giving yours fully and without distraction is one of the rarest things you can offer, and people feel it immediately. They may not name what they felt, they just know they want to be in the room with you again. Now here is what makes these 5 habits so interesting in the context of everything else we explore on this channel. They aren't just professional strategies. They are the behavioral expression of an internal shift, the same shift that the science of getting rich describes, the same one that coherence breathing supports, the same one that our audience seems to find their way back to again and again through the music, the breathwork, the principles. Responsiveness is what presence looks like from the outside. Showing up in person is what commitment looks like in motion. Owning your domain is what long-term investment in yourself eventually becomes. Decisiveness is the outer form of inner clarity, and real engagement, that full, generous, unhurried attention, is what abundance actually looks like when it's directed at another person. You may have noticed that the more time you spend with ideas like these, returning to them, letting them settle, watching them show up in your own life in ways small and large, the less they feel like strategies and the more they feel like remembering something you already knew. That's how this channel is designed to work. Not a single video that changes everything. A body of content you return to, each time finding something slightly different because you are slightly different. The audiobook is there when you want depth. The breathing content is there when you want to reset. The music is there when words have done enough and you need to simply be in the feeling of forward motion. Subscribe if this is landing for you. Come back when you're ready for the next piece. And in the meantime, notice which of those 5 habits is already yours, and which one, if you gave it just a little more attention, might be the one that finally makes the rest of the work pay off. The gap between where you are and where you're going is smaller than it looks, and you've been closing it longer than you know.